Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. Do you find your mind plagued with the stresses of modern life, especially when the lights are out and you're trying to get a restful night? Does your spinning mind keep you awake? Follow my voice down the path towards a good night's rest. Listen to me tell a story that will keep your mind from wandering to your daytime problems. The ones that you can't solve right now and will be easier to solve while rested. Listen to my voice and allow yourself to drift, following the twists and turns of the story, but slowly letting go and drifting into sleep. Now, many podcasts put their promotion and cup rattling halfway through or towards the end. But if all goes well, I'm hoping that you're asleep long before we get there, so I need to put this stuff up front. The show is brought to you by the support of the folks on Patreon. I'm hearing from people all the time how valuable they find the show. And those supporters who have the means and the inclination to help to fund the show, to keep it going and help me to reach new audiences, are very much appreciated. I've had 2 new signups this week from Rachel and Eric. I'm getting very close to my first goal of $50 a month. When I get there, I can start upgrading some of the services that I use to help me to reach potential new audiences and do some advertising to find other desperate insomniacs. So if you would like to, and you can, please take a look at patreon.com/sleepytimetales. The link is in the show notes, or you can also find it linked from the website to see what you can get as a supporter. Aside from the knowledge that you're helping fellow insomniacs, there are benefits there for people from as little as $2 a month. So it's definitely worth taking a look at. There's bonus episodes, shout-outs like I just gave to Rachel and Eric, and all sorts of other odds and ends, and I've got more than a year's worth of back content and bonuses, so if you sign up now, you get a lot of benefits. And again, that's aside from the fact that you are helping me to keep this show going. There are also other methods of support listed in the show notes if contributing every month seems a bit much. Besides the Patreon, there's the tip jar on the website, the merchandise store, and others. But another huge way you can help to spread the word is if there is someone in your life who you think will benefit from listening to Sleepy Time Tales, just let them know. If you recommend the show on social media, make sure to tag me in so that I know and I can thank you. The tag is @SleepyTimeTales on Instagram and Twitter. Speaking of reaching out on social media, I was contacted by a follower called PN. I hope I pronounced that right. Apologies if I get it wrong. Who told me what I thought was a very good story. She has been struggling to sleep for a while, but Sleepy Time Tales has been very helpful to her, and she's usually asleep before getting to the story, which for me is a fantastic thing. In fact, she's found this intro so helpful that recently she went somewhere else for the night, but she forgot to take her earbuds with. But because the intro is pretty much the same all the time, she just went over it in her head and still fell asleep. I consider that pretty high praise and completely hilarious, that the show is so effective that even remembering it makes you fall asleep. So whatever you do, please never listen to Sleepy Time Tales while you're driving. And of course, last but not least, I've got to shout out the music, which is Un Desire Bakumiku. The music is available on the Free Music Archive, and I've linked the website in the show notes, as they've got some very cool stuff that they release under various names that I recommend you check out. Now, thank you for taking the time, and let's get back to the story. So what exactly is Sleepy Time Tales? What is it for? It's a bit of a strange idea, isn't it? A podcast that you're supposed to fall asleep to. But in the year 2020, the lack of sleep is a health crisis, and this is a podcast that is intended to help those that it can to get a restful night. Do you find yourself lying awake at night with your mind spinning and emotions in turmoil with anxieties of 21st century life? Do you wake up in the middle of the night and find yourself not quite able to doze back off at 3 a.m.? I'm here to help. My name is Dave, and I'm your narrator here to help you into a restful night. I'm someone who has struggled to sleep ever since I was a baby. My parents had sleepless nights with me for many years, and even once I got old enough not to bother them, I always struggled to sleep. It was later in life that I discovered the tendency for droning voices, especially male ones, to act something like a tranquilizer for me. I would lie in bed at night to listen to podcasts, expecting to not be able to fall asleep, and I would suddenly wake up finding myself having slept through everything that I was trying to listen to. So I started listening to podcasts specifically to help me sleep. And then I eventually found out that there were some out there and actually intended for that purpose. I tried a few and they worked for me, and I recommended them to other people. But when I recommended them, the people I recommended to often didn't quite enjoy it for various reasons. Even getting over the strange idea of it, they sometimes didn't like the narrator's voice or the sort of concept of the stories and stuff like that. So I thought to myself, I've got this boring, droning male voice. Let me see if I can help people like that who, as far as I knew, the existing shows couldn't reach. Now, every episode starts with this long intro. It's here for a couple of reasons. The first part of it is I need to explain the purpose of the show and the structure of it to new listeners. Because this is a bit of a strange idea, to be fair. If you haven't come across this sort of thing before, you may need me to make a case for it, and that's understandable. Now, obviously, people that have been listening to the show for a while don't need me to explain what it's for. But often for them, this intro is even kind of part of the story or part of the process, rather. For people who have been listening to the show for a long time, they're often asleep before the story even starts. Because this whole part is how we prepare yourselves mentally and prepare yourself and get ready to sleep. We're building a story, we're building a space together that goes beyond the story that I'm telling and into something new. Now, as far as I know, there's a couple of different ways to engage with the show. For me, when I listen to my sleep podcasts, I actually need something, a story or an event that lets me keep my mind on something specific, on some kind of point, to stop it from spinning out into stress and anxieties. I need to focus just enough not to resist the embrace of a night's sleep when it comes for me. Some people may need something a little bit different, something a little bit more primal. For them, it may just need background noise. People sometimes listen to the sound of the ocean or sound of waves or something like that, and for some people, maybe just a boring dude droning in the background is enough. It's what they need. Tonight's story, we're returning to something that from quite a while ago. It's part 2 of Sailing Alone Around the World by Joshua Slocum. We pick up on his journey at sea, and he tells us some stories about encounters with other ships and stuff as he traveled, and places that he went to. He goes to the Azores and makes some friends there. So, quite an interesting story, if not too interesting. I think it's actually almost the perfect sleepy time tale story. Interesting in conception, and in practice, it's a guy just basically reading his diary. So it's both interesting and does not keep you awake. But whatever the story is, however fascinated you may be by sailing and the encounters of an early 20th century sailor, the main thing is that you don't force sleep. You need to keep a light mental grip on the story as it's going, and just allow the need for sleep to come for you. Now, obviously, if all goes well, I'm hoping that you're going to be asleep before you get to the end of the episode. But it is very important that you don't feel pressurized. It may not work on the first night. In fact, it very likely won't. I generally recommend that people try the Sleepy Time Tales or anything that you're listening to try this sort of thing. I recommend you try for at least 3 nights, maybe 4, give it a stretch, because you're trying to get over, you need to take some time to get over the strangeness of it. Why would you be lying in the dark listening to some boring dude droning on, and I'm now probably 10 minutes into this and nothing really has happened, but again, this is all part of the plan. This is part of it. This is the process. You may need to get used to my voice or my accent, and also maybe one episode isn't long enough. I recommend maybe trying to queue up a few episodes. What I usually do is I download a whole bunch and of the shows that I listen to. I can't listen to myself. I heard someone once say that it's like trying to tickle yourself, to listen to yourself telling a story to try to put you to sleep. And I think that's pretty accurate. I couldn't listen to myself. But the shows that I do listen to, as I was saying, and I got sidetracked myself, I have the whole bunch queued up, all downloaded, and then I start with the latest episode, and then I just let them run generally through the night. I usually fall asleep pretty quickly myself, and then when I wake up at 3 a.m., the show is still running and my earbuds have fallen out. Pop them back in, and I let the voices waft me back to sleep. Sometimes I wake up 30 minutes before my alarm goes, or 60 minutes. I usually do the same thing then as if I'd woken up at 3 a.m. I pop those earbuds in and let the voices take me back to sleep again. And you may say to me, Dave, what on earth is the point of getting an extra 30 minutes of sleep? But I've got to promise you, and I've had emails from people telling me that they've found this to be the case, that 30 minutes can be the best part of your night. There's just something about allowing yourself to relax right before the alarm that's just deeply, deeply satisfying. And that's the important word there, relax. It's important that you try to relax. If you're new to the show and prone to late nights lying staring at the ceiling, this may seem strange to you, so give it a chance. And there it is, you have the basic idea. You relax and you lie in the dark, and while you do that, I tell you a tale. So relax, dear listener, my nighttime friend who has elected to lie in the dark, listening to my voice. You will always be safe with me. I'm here to help you relax, to improve your life in a small way, or maybe not so small. People don't sleep very well these days, and it makes their lives harder. So I'm here to do my small part to help you in a big way, to help you face tomorrow and the day after well rested and better able to cope. I believe very strongly in the benefits of kindness. I want to be kind to you. I want to share kindness with you. And most importantly, I need you to be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up or rebuke yourself over not sleeping. Don't get tense if you just can't get yourself over the edge of sleep, even with me here in your ears trying to help. Frustration is one of the great enemies of a good night's sleep, and the intention with this podcast is to short-circuit that frustration, to distract the feeling we get when we blame ourselves for not being able to let go and drift into the dark. So take a breath. Forgive the fact that you can't sleep and let my voice wash over you. Take another breath. Imagine the warm darkness rising up, inviting you to sleep into a better life starting tomorrow. And if you can't let go, forgive yourself and we'll try again tomorrow. If you've had a life of insomnia, sleep can feel like an enemy. But it's a natural process that we've been pulled away from by stress and life, and progress that shines bright lights in our eyes at all hours. I'm here to work with you, to create a safe space, a cocoon in which you can curl up and allow nature to take its course. So if you're still with me, thank you for staying. If you're already asleep, we'll chat again soon. And of course, you aren't hearing me, except maybe in a dream. From Sailing Alone Around the World by Captain Joshua Slocum. July 10th. 8 days at sea. The Spray was 1,200 miles east of Cape Sable. 150 miles a day for so small a vessel must be considered good sailing. It was the greatest run the Spray ever made before or since, in so few days. On the evening of July 14th, in better humour than ever before, all hands cried, "Sail ho!" The sail was a barkentine, 3 points on the weather bow, hull down. Then came the night. My ship was sailing along now without attention to the helm. The wind was south, she was heading east. Her sails were trimmed like the sails of the Nautilus. They drew steadily all night. I went frequently on deck, but found all well. A merry breeze kept up from the south. Early in the morning of the 15th, the Spray was close aboard the Stranger, which proved to be La Vaguista of Vigo, 23 days from Philadelphia, bound for Vigo. A lookout from his masthead had spied the Spray the evening before. The captain, when I came near enough, threw a line to me and sent a bottle of wine across slung by the neck, and very good wine it was. He also sent his name, which bore the name of Juan Gantes. I think he was a good man, as Spaniards go, but when I asked him to report me all well, the Spray passing him in a lively manner, he hauled his shoulders much above his head, and when his mate, who knew of my expedition, told him that I was alone, he crossed himself and made for his cabin. I did not see him again. By sundown, he was as far as astern as he had been ahead the evening before. There was now less and less monotony. On July 16th, the wind was northwest and clear. The sea smooth, and a large bark, hull down, came in sight on the lee bow. And at 2:30 p.m. I spoke to the Stranger. She was the bark Java of Glasgow, from Peru to Queenstown for orders. Her old captain was bearish, but I met a bear once in Alaska that looked pleasanter. At least the bear seemed pleased to meet me, but this grizzly old man? Well, I suppose my hail disturbed his siesta, and my little sloop passing his great ship had somewhat the effect on him that a red rag has upon a bull. I had the advantage over heavy ships by long odds in the light winds of this and the 2 previous days. The wind was light, his ship was heavy and foul, making poor headway, while the Spray, with a great mainsail bellying even to light winds, was just skipping along as nimbly as one could wish. "How long has it been calm about here?" roared the captain of the Java as I came within hail of him. "Dunno, Captain," I shouted back as loud as I could bawl. "I haven't been here long." At this, the mate on the forecastle wore a broad grin. "I left Cape Sable 14 days ago," I added. I was now well across toward the Azores. "Mate," he roared to his chief officer. "Mate, come here and listen to the Yankees yarn. Hold down the flag, mate, hold down the flag." In the best of humour, after all, the Java surrendered to the Spray. The acute pain of solitude experienced at first never returned. I had penetrated a mystery, and by the way I had sailed through a fog. I had met Neptune in his wrath, but he found that I had not treated him with contempt, so he suffered me to go on and explore. In the log for July 18th there is this entry: "Fine weather, wind south-southwest, porpoises gambolling all about. The SS Olympia passed at 11:30 a.m. Long W 34 degrees, 50 minutes. "It lacks now 3 minutes of the half hour," shouted the captain as he gave me the longitude and the time. I admired the businesslike air of the Olympia, but I have the feeling still that the captain was just a little too precise in his reckoning. That may be all well enough, however, where there is plenty of sea room. But overconfidence, I believe, was the cause of the disaster to the liner Atlantic and many more like her. The captain knew too well where he was. There were no porpoises at all skipping along with the Olympia. Porpoises always prefer sailing ships. The captain was a young man, I observed, and had before him, I hope, a good record. Land ho. On the morning of July 19th, a mystic dome like a mountain of silver stood alone in the sea ahead. Although the land was completely hidden by the white glistening haze that shone in the sun like polished silver, I felt quite sure that it was Flores Island. At 4:30 p.m. it was abeam. The haze in the meantime had disappeared. Flores is 174 miles from Fayal, and although it is a high island, it remained many years undiscovered after the principal group of the islands had been colonized. Early on the morning of July 20th, I saw Pico looming above the clouds on the starboard bow. Lower islands burst forth as the sun burned away the morning fog, and island after island came into view. As I approached nearer, cultivated fields appeared, and oh, how green the corn. Only those who have seen the Azores from the deck of a vessel realize the beauty of the mid-ocean picture. At 4:30 p.m., I cast anchor at Fayal, exactly 18 days from Cape Sable. The American consul, in a smart boat, came alongside before the spray reached the breakwater, and a young naval officer who feared for the safety of my vessel boarded and offered his services as a pilot. The youngster, I have no reason to doubt, could have handled a man-of-war, but the spray was too small for the amount of uniform he wore. However, after fouling all the craft in port and sinking a lighter, she was moored without much damage to herself. This wonderful pilot expected a gratification. I understood, but whether for the reason that his government and not I would have to pay the cost of raising the lighter, or because he did not sink the spray, I could never make out. But I forgave him. It was the season for fruit when I arrived at the Azores, and there was soon more of all kinds of it put on board than I knew what to do with. Islanders are always the kindest people in the world, and I met none anywhere kinder than the good hearts of this place. The people of the Azores are not a very rich community. The burden of taxes is heavy, with scant privileges in return, the air they breathe being about the only thing that is not taxed. The mother country does not even allow them a port of entry for foreign mail service. A packet passing never so close with mails for Horta must first deliver them in Lisbon, ostensibly to be fumigated, but really for the tariff from the packet. My own letters posted at Horta reached the United States 6 days behind my letter from Gibraltar, mailed 13 days later. The day after my arrival at Horta was a feast of a great saint. Boats loaded with people came from other islands to celebrate at Horta, the capital or Jerusalem of the Azores. The deck of the spray was crowded from morning till night with men, women, and children. On the day after the feat, a kind-hearted native harnessed a team and drove me a day over the beautiful roads all about Fayal. Because, said he in broken English, when I was in America and couldn't speak a word of English, I found it hard till I met someone who seemed to have time to listen to my story. And I promised my good saint that if ever a stranger came to my country, I would try to make him happy. Unfortunately, this gentleman brought along an interpreter, that I might learn more of the country. The fellow was nearly the death of me, talking of ships and voyages and of the boats he had steered, the last thing in the world I wished to hear. He had sailed out of New Bedford, so he said, for that Joe Wing they called John. My friend and host hardly found a chance to edge in a word. Before we parted, my host dined me with a cheer that would have gladdened the heart of a prince, but he was quite alone in his house. My wife and children all rest there, said he, pointing to the churchyard across the way. I moved to this house from far off, he added, to be near the spot where I pray every morning. I remained 4 days at Fayal and was 2 days more than I had intended to stay. It was the kindness of the islanders and their touching simplicity which detained me. A damsel as innocent as an angel came alongside one day and said she would embark on the spray if I would land her at Lisbon. She could cook flying fish, she thought, but her forte was dressing bacalao. Her brother, Antonio, who served as interpreter, hinted that anyhow he would like to make the trip. Antonio's heart went out to one John Wilson, and he was ready to sail for America by way of the two Capes to meet his friend. "Do you know John Wilson of Boston?" he cried. "I knew a John Wilson," I said, "but not of Boston." "He had one daughter and one son," said Antonio, by way of identifying his friend. If this reaches the right John Wilson, I'm to say that Antonio of Pico remembers him. Chapter 4. Squally weather in the Azores, high living, delirious from cheese and plums, the pilot to the Pinta, at Gibraltar, compliments exchanged with the British Navy, a picnic on the Moroccan shore. I set sail from Horta early on July 24th. The southwest wind at the time was light, but squalls came up with the sun, and I was glad to get reefs in my sails before I had gone a mile. I had hardly set the mainsail double reefed when a squall of wind down the mountain struck the sloop with such violence that I thought her mast would go. However, a quick helm brought her to the wind, and it was one of the weather lanyards was carried away, and the other was stranded. My tin basin caught up by the wind went flying across a French schoolship to leeward. It was more or less squally all day, sailing along under high land, but rounding close under a bluff. I set sail from Horta early on July 24th. The southwest wind at the time was light, but squalls came up with the sun, and I was glad enough to get reefs in my sails before I had gone a mile. I had hardly set the mainsail double reefed when a squall of wind down the mountain struck the sloop with such violence that I thought her mast would go. However, a quick helm brought her to the wind. As it was, one of the weather lanyards was carried away and the other was stranded. My tin basin, caught up by the wind, went flying across a French schoolship to the leeward. It was more or less squally all day, sailing along under high land. But rounding close under a bluff, I found an opportunity to mend the broken lanyards broken in the squall. No sooner had I lowered my sails when a four-oared boat shot out from some gully in the rocks with a customs officer on board, who thought he had come upon a smuggler. I had some difficulty in making him comprehend the true case. However, one of his crew, a sailorly chap who understood how matters were, while we palavered, jumped on board and rove off with the new lanyards I had already prepared, and with a friendly hand helped me set up the rigging. This incident gave the turn in my favor. My story was then clear to all. I have found that this is the way of the world. Let one be without a friend and see what will happen. Passing the island of Pico after the rigging was mended, the spray stretched across to leeward of the island of St. Michael's, which she was up with early on the morning of July 26th, the wind blowing hard. Later in the day, she passed the Prince of Monaco's fine steam yacht bound to Fayal, where on a previous voyage the prince had slipped his cables to escape a reception which the padres of the island wished to give him. Why he so dreaded the ovation I could not make out. At Horta they did not know. Since reaching the islands, I had lived most luxuriously on fresh bread, butter, vegetables, and fruits of all kinds. Plums seemed most plentiful on the spray, and these I ate without stint. I had also a pico white cheese that General Manning, the American Consul General, had given me, which I supposed was to be eaten, and of this I partook with the plums. Alas, by night time I was doubled up with cramps. The wind, which was already a smart breeze, was increasing somewhat with the heavy sky to the southwest. Reefs had been turned out, and I must turn them in again somehow. Between cramps, I got the mainsail down, hauled out the earrings as best as I could, and tied away point by point in the double reef. There being sea room, I should, in strict prudence, have made all snug and gone down at once to my cabin. I am a careful man at sea, but this night, in the coming storm, I swayed up my sails, which, reefed though they were still too much in such heavy weather, and I saw to it that the sheets were securely belayed. In a word, I should have laid to, but did not. I gave her the double-reefed mainsail and the whole jib instead, and set her on her course. Then I went below and threw myself upon the cabin floor in great pain. How long I lay there, I could not tell, for I became delirious. When I came to, as I thought from my swoon, I realized that the sloop was plunging into a heavy sea, and looking out of the companionway, to my amazement, I saw a tall man at the helm. His rigid hand, grasping the spokes of the wheel, held them as in a vice. One may imagine my astonishment. His rig was that of a foreign sailor, and the large red cap he wore was cockbilled over his left ear, and all was set off with shaggy black whiskers. He would have been taken for a pirate in any part of the world. While I gazed upon this threatening aspect, I forgot the storm, and wondered if he had come to cut my throat. This he seemed to divine. "Senor," said he, doffing his cap, "I have come to do you no harm." And a smile, the faintest in the world, but still a smile, played on his face, which seemed not unkind when he spoke. "I have come to do you no harm. I have sailed free," he said, "but was never worse than a contrabandista. I am one of Columbus's crew," he continued. "I am the pilot of the Pinta come to aid you. Lie quiet, Senor Captain," he added, "and I'll guide your ship tonight. You have a calentura, but you will be all right tomorrow." I thought what a very devil he was to carry sail. Again, as if he read my mind, he exclaimed, "Yonder is the Pinta ahead. We must overtake her. Give her sail, vale, vale, muy vale." Biting off a large quid of black twist, he said, "You did wrong, Captain, to mix cheese with plums. White cheese is never safe unless you know whence it comes. Queen Sabe, it must have been from leche de capra and become capricious." "Avast there," I cried. "I have no mind for moralizing." I made shift to spread a mattress and lie on that instead of the hard floor, my eyes all the while fastened on my strange guest, who remarked again that I would only have pains in calentura, chuckled as he chanted a wild song. Higher the waves fierce gleaming, high as the tempest roar, high the seabird screaming, high the Azore. I suppose I was now on the mend, for I was peevish and complained. "I detest your jingle. Your Azore should be at roost and would have been were it a respectable bird." I begged he would tie a rope yarn on the rest of the song if there were any more of it. I was still in agony. Great seas were boarding the spray, but in my fevered brain I thought there were boats falling on deck, that careless draymen were throwing from wagons onto the pier which I imagined the spray was now moored, and without fenders to breast her off. "You'll smash your boats," I called out again and again as the seas crashed on the cabin over my head. "You'll smash your boats, but you can't hurt the spray. She is strong," I cried. I found, when my pains and calentura had gone, that the deck, now as white as a shark's tooth from seas washing over it, had been swept of everything movable. To my astonishment, I saw now at broad day that the spray was still heading as I had left her, and was going like a racehorse. Columbus himself could not have held her more exactly on her course. The sloop had made 90 miles in the night through a rough sea. I felt grateful to the old pilot, but I marveled at some that he had not taken in the jib. The gale was moderating, and by noon the sun was shining. A meridian altitude and the distance to the patent log, which I always kept towing, told me that she had made a true course throughout the 24 hours. I was getting much better now, but was very weak and did not turn out reefs that day or the night following, although the wind fell light. but I just put my wet clothes out in the sun when it was shining and laying down there fell asleep. Then who should visit me again but my old friend of the night before, this time of course in a dream. "You did well last night to take my advice," said he, "and if you would, I should like to be with you often on the voyage, for the love of adventure alone." Finishing what he had come to say, he again doffed his cap and disappeared as mysteriously as he came, returning, I suppose, to the phantom Pintia. I awoke much refreshed and with the feeling that I had been in the presence of a friend and a seaman of vast experience. I gathered up my clothes, which by this time were dry. Then, by inspiration, I threw overboard all the plums in the vessel. July 28th was exceptionally fine. The wind from the northwest was light and the air balmy. I overhauled my wardrobe and bent on a white shirt against nearing some coasting packet with genteel folk were on board. I also did some washing to get the salt out of my clothes. After it all, I was hungry, so I made a fire and very cautiously stewed a dish of pears, and then set them carefully aside till I made a pot of delicious coffee, for both of which I could afford sugar and cream. But the crowning dish of all was a fish hash, and there was enough for two. I was in good health again, and my appetite was simply ravenous. While I was dining, I had a large onion over the double lamp, stewing for a luncheon later in the day. High living today. In the afternoon, the spray came upon a large turtle asleep on the sea. He awoke with my harpoon through his neck, if he awoke at all. I had much difficulty in landing him on deck, which I finally accomplished by hooking the throat halyards to one of his lip flippers, for it was about as heavy as my boat. I saw more turtles, and I rigged a burden ready with which to hoist him in, for I was obliged to lower the mainsail whenever the halyards were used for such purposes, and it was no small matter to hoist the large sail again. But the turtle steak was good. I found no fault with the cook, and it was the rule of the voyage that the cook found no fault with me. There was never a ship's crew so well agreed. The bill of fare that evening was turtle steak, tea and toast, fried potatoes, stewed onions, with dessert of stewed pears and cream. Sometime in the afternoon, I passed a barrel buoy adrift, floating light on the water. It was painted red and rigged with a signal staff about 6 feet high. A sudden change in the weather coming on, I got no more turtle or fish of any sort before reaching port. July 31st, a gale sprang up suddenly from the north with heavy seas, and I shortened sail. The Spray made only 51 miles on her course that day. August 1st, the gale continued with heavy seas. Through the night, the sloop was reaching under close-reefed mainsail and bob jib. At 3 p.m., the jib was washed off the bowsprit and blown to rags and ribbons. I pinned the jumbo on a stay at the knightheads. As for the jib, let it go. I saved pieces of it, and after all, I was in want of pot rags. On August 3rd, the gale broke, and I saw many signs of land. Bad weather having made itself felt in the galley, I was minded to try my hand at a loaf of bread, and so rigging a pot of fire on deck by which to bake it, a loaf soon became an accomplished fact. One great feature about ship's cooking is that one's appetite on the sea is always good. A fact that I realized when I cooked for the crew of fishermen in the before-mentioned boyhood days. Dinner being over, I sat for hours reading the life of Columbus, and as the day wore on, I watched the birds all fly in one direction, and said, "Land lies there." Early the next morning, August 4th, I discovered Spain. I saw fires on shore and knew that the country was inhabited. The Spray continued on her course till well in with the land, which was that about Trafalgar. Then, keeping away a point, she passed through the Strait of Gibraltar, where she cast anchor at 3 p.m. of the same day, less than 29 days from Cape Sable. At the finish of this preliminary trip, I found myself in excellent health, not overworked or cramped, but as well as ever in my life, though I was thin as a reef point. Two Italian barks which had been close alongside at daylight, I saw long after I had anchored, passing up the African side of the strait. The Spray had sailed them both hull down before she reached Tarifa. So far as I know, the Spray beat everything going across the Atlantic except the steamers. All was well, but I had forgotten to bring a bill of health from Horta, and so when the fierce old port doctor came in to inspect, there was a row. That, however, was the very thing needed. If you want to get on well with a true Britisher, you must first have a juice with a row with him. I knew that well enough, so I fired away shot for shot as best I could. Well, yes, the doctor admitted at last, your crew are healthy enough, no doubt, but who knows the diseases of your last port? A reasonable enough remark. We ought to put you in the fort, sir, he blustered, but never mind. Free pratique, sir, shove off coxswain. And that was the last I saw of the port doctor. But on the following morning, a steam launch, much longer than the Spray, came alongside, or as much of her as could get alongside, with compliments from the senior naval officer, Admiral Bruce, saying there was a berth for the Spray at the arsenal. This was around at the new mole. I had anchored at the old mole among the native craft where it was rough and uncomfortable. Of course, I was glad to shift and did so, as soon as possible, thinking of the great company the Spray would be in among battleships such as the Collingwood, Bellfleur, and Cormorant, which were at the time stationed there, and on board of which I was entertained, later, most royally. Put it dar, as the Americans say, was the salute I got from Admiral Bruce when I called at the Admiralty to thank him for his courtesy of the berth, and for the use of the steam launch which towed me into dock. About the berth, it is all right if it suits, and we'll tow you out when we are ready to go. But say, what repairs do you want? Ahoy the Hebe, can you spare your sailmaker? The Spray wants a new jib. Construction and repair there. Will you see to the Spray? Say, old man, you must have knocked the devil out of her coming over alone in 29 days. But we'll make it smooth for you here. Not even Her Majesty's ship, the Collingwood, was better looked after than the Spray at Gibraltar. Later in the day came the hail, Spray ahoy. Mrs. Bruce would like to come aboard and shake hands with the Spray. Will it be convenient today? Very, I joyfully shouted. On the following day, Sir F. Carrington, at the time Governor of Gibraltar, with other high officers of the garrison and all the commanders of the battleships, came on board and signed their names in the Spray's logbook. Again there was a hail, Spray ahoy. Hello. Commander Reynolds' compliments. You are invited on board HMS Collingwood at home at 4:30 p.m., not later than 5:30 p.m. I had already hinted at the limited amount of my wardrobe and that I could never succeed as a dude. You're expected, sir, in a stovepipe hat and a clawhammer coat. Then I can't come. Dash it. Come in what you have on, that is what we mean. Aye, aye, sir. The Collingwood's cheer was good, and I had worn a silk hat as high as the moon. I could not have had a better time, or been made more at home. An Englishman, even on his great battleship, unbends when the stranger passes his gangway, and when he stays at home, he means it. That one should like Gibraltar would go without saying. How could one help loving so hospitable a place? Vegetables twice a week and milk every morning came from the palatial grounds of the Admiralty. Spray ahoy, would hail the Admiral. Spray ahoy. Hello. Tomorrow is a vegetable day, sir. Aye, aye, sir. I rambled much about the old city, and a gunner piloted me through the galleries of the rock as far as a stranger is permitted to go. There is no excavation in the world, for military purposes at all, approaching these of Gibraltar in conception or execution. Viewing the stupendous works, it became hard to realize that one was in the Gibraltar of this little old Morse geography. Before sailing, I was invited on a picnic with the governor, the officers of the garrison, and the commanders of the warships at the station. And a royal affair it was. Torpedo boat number 91, going 22 knots, carried our party to the Morocco shore and back. The day was perfect. Too fine, in fact, for comfort on shore, and no one landed at Morocco. Number 91 trembled like an aspen leaf as she raced through the sea at top speed. Sub-Lieutenant Boucher, apparently a mere lad, was in command, and handled his ship with the skill of an older sailor. On the following day I lunched with General Carrington, the governor, at Larnwell House, which was once the Franciscan convent. In this interesting edifice are preserved relics of the 14 sieges which Gibraltar has seen. On the next day I supped with the Admiral at his residence, the palace which was once the convent of the mercenaries. At each place and all about I felt the friendly grasp of a manly hand that lent me vital strength to pass the coming long days at sea. I must confess that the perfect discipline, order, and cheerfulness of Gibraltar was only a second wonder in the great stronghold. The vast amount of business going forward caused no more excitement than the quiet sailing of a well-appointed ship in the smooth sea. No one spoke above his natural voice, save a boatswain's mate now and then. The Honorable Horatio J. Sprague, the venerable United States Consul at Gibraltar, honored the Spray with a visit on Sunday, August 24th, and was much pleased to find that our British cousins had been so kind to her. Chapter 5. Sailing from Gibraltar with the assistance of Her Majesty's tug, the Spray's course changed from the Suez Canal to Cape Horn. Chased by a Moorish pirate. A comparison with Columbus. The Canary Islands, the Cape Verde Islands. Sea life. Arrival at Pernambuco. A bull against the Brazilian government. Preparing for the stormy weather of the Cape. Monday, August 25th, the Spray sailed from Gibraltar, well repaid for whatever deviation she had made from the direct course to reach the place. A tug belonging to Her Majesty towed the sloop into the steady breeze clear of the mount, where her sails caught a violent wind which carried her once more to the Atlantic, where it rose rapidly to a furious gale. My plan was, in going down this coast, to haul offshore, well clear of the land, which hereabouts is the home of pirates. But I had hardly accomplished this when I perceived a felucca making out of the nearest port, and finally following in the wake of the Spray. Now my course to Gibraltar had been taken with a view to proceed up the Mediterranean Sea, through the Suez Canal, down the Red Sea, and east about, instead of a western route which I finally adopted. By officers of vast experience in navigating these seas, I was influenced to make the change. Longshore pirates on both coasts being numerous, I could not afford to make light of the advice. But here I was, after all, evidently in the midst of pirates and thieves. I changed my course, the felucca did the same. Both vessels sailing very fast, but the distance growing less and less between us. The Spray was doing nobly. She was even more than at her best, but in spite of all I could do, she would broach now and then. She was carrying too much sail for safety. I must reef or be dismasted and lose all, pirate or no pirate. I must reef, even if I had to grapple with him for my life. I was not long in reefing the mainsail and sweating it up. Probably not more than 15 minutes, but the felucca had in the meantime so shortened the distance between us that I now saw the tuft of hair on the heads of the crew, and they were coming in like the wind. From what I could clearly make out now, I felt them to be the sons of generations of pirates, and I saw by their movements that they were now preparing to strike a blow. The exultation on their faces, however, was changed in an instant to a look of fear and rage. Their craft, with too much sail on, broached onto the crest of a great wave. This one great sea changed the aspect of affairs suddenly as the flash of a gun. 3 minutes later, the same wave overtook the Spray and shook her in every timber. At the same moment, the street strop parted and away went the main boom, broken short at the rigging. Impulsively, I sprang to the jib halyards and downhaul and instantly downed the jib. The headsail being off and the helm put hard down, the sloop came in the wind with a bound. While shivering there, but a moment though it was, I got the mainsail down and secured inboard, broken boom and all. How I got the boom in before the sail was torn I hardly know, but not a stitch of it was broken. The mainsail being secured, I hoisted away the jib and, without looking round, stepped quickly to the cabin and snatched down my loaded rifle and cartridges at hand. For I made mental calculations that the pirate would by this time have recovered his course and be close aboard, and that when I saw him it would be better for me to be looking at him along the barrel of a gun. The piece was at my shoulder when I peered into the mist, but there was no pirate within a mile. The wave and squall that carried away my boom dismasted the felucca outright. I perceived his thieving crew, some dozen or more of them, struggling to recover their rigging from the sea. I sailed comfortably on under the jib and forestaysail, which I now set. I fished the boom and furled the sail snug for the night, then hauled the sloop's head 2 points offshore to allow for the set of currents and heavy rollers towards the land. This gave me wind 3 points on that starboard quarter and a steady pull on the headsails. By the time I had things in this order, it was dark and a flying fish had already fallen on deck. I took him below for my supper, but found myself too tired to cook, or even to eat a thing already prepared. I do not remember to have been more tired before or since in all my life than I was at the finish of that day. Too fatigued to sleep, I rolled about with the motion of the vessel till near midnight, when I made shift to dress my fish and prepare a dish of tea. I fully realized now, if I had not before, that the voyage ahead would call for exertions ardent and lasting. On August 27th, nothing could be seen of the Moa, or his country either, except 2 peaks away in the east, through the clear atmosphere of morning. Soon after the sun rose, even these were obscured by haze, much to my satisfaction. The wind, for a few days, followed my escape from the pirates, blew a steady but moderate gale, and the sea, though agitated into long rollers, was not uncomfortably rough or dangerous. And while sitting in my cabin, I could hardly realize that any sea was running at all. So easy was the long, swinging motion of the sloop over the waves. All distracting uneasiness and excitement being now over, I once more alone with myself and the realization that I was on the mighty sea, and in the hands of the elements. But I was happy and was becoming more and more interested in the voyage. Columbus in the Santa Maria, sailing these seas more than 400 years before, was not so happy as I, nor so sure of success in what I had undertaken. His first troubles at sea had already begun. His crew had managed, by foul play or otherwise, to break the ship's rudder while running before probably just such a gale as the spray had passed through. And there was dissension on the Santa Maria, something that was unknown on the spray. After 3 days of squalls and shifting winds, I threw myself down to rest and sleep, while with the helm lashed, the sloop sailed steadily on her course. September 1st in the early morning, land clouds rising ahead told of Canary Islands not far away. A change in the weather came next day. Storm clouds stretched their arms across the sky. From the east, to all appearances, might come a fierce harmattan, or from the south might come the fierce hurricane. Every point of the compass threatened to a wild storm. My attention was turned to reefing sails, and no time was to be lost over it either, for the sea in a moment was confusion in itself, and I was glad to head the sloop 3 points or more away from her true course, that she might ride safely over the waves. I was now scudding her for the channel between Africa and the island of Fuerteventura, the easternmost of the Canary Islands, for which I was on the lookout. At 2 p.m. the weather became suddenly fine. The island stood in view, already abeam to starboard, and not more than 7 miles off. Fuerteventura is 2,700 feet high, and in fine weather is visible many leagues away. The wind freshened in the night, and the Spray had a fine run through the channel. By daylight, September 23rd, she was 25 miles clear of all the islands. Then a calm ensued, which was the precursor of another gale of wind that soon came on, bringing with it dust from the African shore. It howled dismally while it lasted, and though it was not the season of the harmattan, the sea in the course of an hour was discolored with reddish-brown dust. The air remained thick with flying dust all the afternoon, but the wind, veering northwards at night, swept it back to land and afforded the Spray once more a clear sky. Her mast now bent under a strong, steady pressure, and her bellying sail swept the sea as she rolled scuppers under, courtesying to the waves. These rolling waves thrilled me as they tossed my ship, passing quickly under her keel. This was grand sailing. September 4th. The wind, still fresh, blew from the north-northeast, and the sea surged along with the sloop. At about noon, a steamship, a bullock drosher from the River Plate, hove in sight, steering northeast and making bad weather of it. I signaled her, but got no answer. She was plunging into the head sea and rolling in a most astonishing manner, and from the way she yawed, one might have said that a wild steer was at the helm. On the morning of September 6th, I found 3 flying fish on deck, and a 4th one down the forescuttle, as close as possible to the frying pan. It was the best haul yet, and afforded me a sumptuous breakfast and dinner. The Spray had now settled down to the trade winds and to the business of her voyage. Later in the day, another drosher hove in sight, rolling as badly as her predecessor. I threw no flag out to this one, but got the worst of it for passing under her lee. She was indeed a stale one. And the poor cattle, how they bellowed. The time was when ships passed one another at sea, backed their topsails and had a gam, and on parting fired guns. But those good old days have gone. People have hardly time nowadays to speak even on the broad ocean, when news is news, and as for a salute of guns, they cannot afford the powder. There are no poetry-enshrined freighters on the sea now. It is a prosy life when we have no time to bid one another good morning. My ship running now in the full swing of the trades left me days to myself for rest and recuperation. I employed the time in reading and writing, or in whatever I found to do about the rigging and the sails to keep them all in order. The cooking was always done quickly and was a small matter, as the bill of fare consisted mostly of flying fish, hot biscuits and butter, potatoes, coffee and cream, dishes readily prepared. And I think that's where I'm going to call it tonight. A reminder that if you enjoy the stories that you hear, you can easily find it on Project Gutenberg, which is at the link in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepytime Tales, the podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. But make sure to subscribe in whatever service you use so that you get new episodes whenever they come out. A reminder that the music for tonight is Un Desire Bakumiku. Check out more of their work on their website, which you'll find linked in the show notes. Good night, and sweet dreams.